guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video features Hero Arts, my monthly hero February 2022 kit. I'm just going to be using the main kit and I'm going to make 2 cards. So the vibe of this kit is a little, what's the word, like ethereal. It's a little, it's kind of like a different perspective and I think it's a lot of fun. But I also understand, wanting to get the most out of what you have. And these kits they're a fantastic deal for the product that you get versus what you pay. But I understand that, like, if you struggle with maybe using things that are a little bit different, that I wanted to show you that you can still use this kit to make something that is a traditional card. So that's the first card that we're going to make. That's why this video is a little longer, because there's 2 cards. So this one, I pulled out the Deco Pattern stencil from Hero Arts, which I like. I think it's a really pretty design. And I am just creating my own pattern paper, basically. I'm going to use this as my background for my card. I'm using the soft pool ink, and I'm just ink blending that. With almost all of my stencils, I use Tombow Mono Multi Glue, which dries repositionable, and I put that on the back of my stencils, and then they stay down without me having to do any work, and that's what is holding this one down. So I just went over the whole card with this soft pool ink, and I'm going to go back in with an adhesive eraser and get any maybe like tacky spots that are left behind from the glue. From there, looking at the main kit images, which I really liked, and I didn't even get to use all of the ones that I wanted to, but I used the 2 that stuck out to me the most in the second card. But I love butterflies. I've always loved them. I think that they're beautiful, and I think that they're a good neutral thing to put on a card. So I picked this butterfly frame out from the main kit. In the main kit, they also have another smaller butterfly that's just single on its own. I'm going to use that as well. I'm stamping this down. I'm going to color it with my Copics and then use the dies that are included in the kit to cut it out and create my focal point. I did not do a bunch of shading on these butterflies. I didn't think it was necessary, because they are smaller and they already have a lot of detail drawn into the stamp. And so I just picked a rainbow of colors and just started filling in my butterflies. The yellow that I picked originally, too light. I needed a bolder yellow. So eventually I'm going to go back in and change that up because he was just kind of getting lost in the background there. My little yellow butterfly. But I think that it's a really cute little frame. I decided to color it like a mirror, but you obviously would not have to do that. I just thought that that would be kind of a fun way to look at it. Here's where I'm changing up that yellow. And then you can color the frame anything that you want. You could have gone like a wood frame or a silver frame. I went with gold. Do you ever notice that with people? Like people are pretty married to what color gold they wear, like whether they're white gold or they're silver people, or I should say what metal they like to wear. I'm a yellow gold. I always have been a yellow gold. And even like a rose gold now is popular. I don't own any of that either. I'm a yellow gold girl. Just told you this. So pretty much all of my jewelry is yellow gold, or it's a combination. I mean my good jewelry. Not my costume jewelry, though I do own that too. Because sometimes you just need, you need something to pull an outfit together. And so I'm not spending, a lot of money on a long chain pendant to pull together my, long sweater and cardigan. I'm just going to buy the costume jewelry. And that's pretty in its own right. But that I do have mixed because sometimes I needed like silver, or I needed, something else depending upon how the outfit looked. But all of my good jewelry almost is yellow gold, just because that's my preferred look, and that includes my wedding band. And my cross is two-tone. The one that I've had, my whole life. And then recently, it wasn't for Christmas. I think it was for my birthday. Peanut got me one of those mom charms. It's like a silver heart and it says mom in yellow gold, and so I wear that now with my cross. I've just doubled them up on the same chain. Um and yeah, I like gold. Always have. So anyway, moving on. This is colored gold. At least to the best of my ability to do so in such a small area. And then we're going to move on to the coloring of the mirror. This sounds like it might be tricky, but it's really not. Basically, when you're going in and you're coloring a mirror, you just want to do your diagonal shading, not complete. Like, you'll see, like, we're going to do some streaks. We're going to color some areas dark and some areas light, but you always want that diagonal to be going in the same direction, and it will help give that reflective mirror look that you would see in real life. And honestly, in hindsight, I may have even gotten a little heavy-handed with adding my blue shading. You could probably even go lighter than I did and still have a really good result. But I was adding the shading around the butterflies as well, and that might have been a mistake on my part. Later on, I'm going to go in with a white gel pen and add some much stronger highlights. But ultimately, even without those, you can tell that it is a mirror look. And I added those white highlights to the metal frame as well. And then we're going to die cut. So this card really did come together very quickly, which is nice, but that's why my video is longer, because the other card could have been a standalone video with story time on its own. This card, when I edited it, that's a phrase. When I completed editing it, it was only 8 minutes, and I was like, they will tar and feather me if I post an 8-minute video and I don't have time to have story time. So that's why I opted to just combine them into one video, which added about 5 minutes to my normal video length, but I figured you would forgive me as long as I included story time. So here I've die cut it out. I've just lined up the sentiment at the bottom. This is not glued down yet, but I needed it for a placeholder. And I'm just going to go ahead and stamp this in the Hero Arts black dye ink. It says, have a beautiful day. It's very, kind of fitting for the butterflies. And then I'm going to use this little teeny tiny butterfly that we talked about before. And I'm just going to stamp this with an acrylic block. It did not seem efficient to use my Misty to do this. Because I'm going to be stamping quite a few of them. But I just wanted them to look like they were kind of flying away from this mirror. And so I did a couple around the mirror, and then I also added a couple around the sentiment and then colored them with the same color inks that I previously used. I'm going to pop the frame up on some Scotch foam tape and put that down. And then I went back and forth about whether or not to pop the whole white panel up on foam. In hindsight, I kind of maybe have some regrets about that I didn't pop it up, but I ended up just gluing it down flat. The pool in the background plays really nicely with the pool in the mirror, and that I think that blue is a neutral, so I was fine with that with my little rainbow colored butterflies. The only other thing that I did to finish this card once I glued my panel down was I went back in with some Stardust stickles to make them glittery, because I love the glitters, and that's why I didn't do the shading, because I knew I was going to put glitter on top of it and they were already so small, there wasn't really a point. So I'm just doing a little couple of dabs of glitter, and then that's it. That card's done. And it is a pretty classic, traditional, like, clean and simple layered card. Now, we're going to get into the other card. As soon as I saw this kit, this melty, starry night sky thing that they got going on, I was so drawn to that. And I originally thought I was going to do it as a rainbow, and then I had an idea to do this scene with the door. So the door and the melty starry sky is really what kind of prompted this, and it's super fitting for my life right now. So I drew my baseboard, which actually ended up being a little low. So I ended up moving it up after I did my stamping. But I'm going to stamp these down, and then I wanted another window because I felt like the left hand side of the card would be a little empty. And so here I'm just taking my T-square ruler and I'm giving myself a line so that my windows line up. I lined up my ruler with the top side of the first window that I stamped in order to line up and then stamp the second window. Once everything was stamped out, I went ahead and went back in with a Copic Safe pen to draw in my baseboards. And like I said, I had to move that up just a hair, but it wasn't a big deal. My dogs are barking at nothing again. Welcome to my life. From there, we're going to start doing some coloring in the background. The idea that I had that I was trying to turn into a scene was one of the sentiments says, beautiful things await you. And so with the door being open and like these clouds and kind of like representing this possibility, I wanted there to be a distinct difference between the door opening and letting in light and the darkened room where kind of the night is pouring into this room. So I am putting down some shaded lilac because I need that little bit of purple. I can't just go straight gray because that's not how night light looks. And then I'm going to block out that particular section with some tape. I'm just lining it up along the line, like the door, how that light would come in. And then I'm going to add some hickory smoke on top of that. So I just want to kind of create this darkened gray room where like the night is pouring into it. And then here's this door open with the light that's, leaving this open for possibilities. And I did do a little bit of masking to get that look. The rest of it, because I'm going to be die cutting those things out, I don't have to mask any of this. The only reason that I stamped the things previously was so that I would know for placement purposes where everything was going to go and everything was going to fit. So I'm doing the same thing I did previously. I'm putting down the shaded lilac and then I'm adding the hickory smoke on top of it to kind of give me that purplish gray look. When I did the masking of the floor, that was not necessary for the light portion, but it was necessary to get kind of two separate tones. I didn't want it to look all one tone because typically, your walls are not the same color as your floor. But I did still want them to all be kind of like in night. Gonna stamp these out and then we're going to get into the coloring. I stamped 2 of the window frames and 2 of the melting sky because I have those 2 windows, but I'm only going to use a portion of one of them because it hangs off the card. Okay, now we're going to get into the coloring. If you've never watched my videos before, I prefer to start with my lightest color most of the time. Lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest, and that's kind of how I do things. If there's anything of particular note while we're coloring, I'll talk about that. But otherwise, welcome to story time. So how did when I was creating this card, this card is pretty fitting for what is happening in my life right now. I have always been an anxious person. My anxiety has increased as I have gotten older. I don't know why that is. I have anxiety about a lot of things, but my driving anxiety is probably the one I deal with the most. But then I'm just generally anxious. I worry about things, and I can't control it. And that's something that you need to understand with anxiety. If you have anxiety, it's not something that you have I can't stop my brain. I can't turn it off. And that's why, they have anxiety medication out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you need medication to help you to feel like you have a better grip on things or you can cope better with things, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that game whatsoever. If you feel like maybe your anxiety is just situational, they do have other ways that you can cope with going to therapy and learning different techniques that you can use, where they tell you to distract yourself, to exercise, to there's like the 3-3-3 rule that you can do to kind of ground yourself, which is I'm trying to remember what it is. It's say 3 things that you see, move 3 different body parts, and I can't remember what the third one is. Google it if you think that would help you. But so there's all these things that you can do to deal with your anxiety. I have tried very, very hard in my life to not let my anxiety keep me from doing things that I really wanted to do. And that's not the case for everybody. Not everybody can push themselves to do those things. Some people have more severe anxiety where it leads to a panic attack. And that's, it's a physiological response there. You can't control it. I get frustrated with myself. I get angry with myself. Because I can't stop it. And I just want to be able to do those things. Side note, back to the card. So here with the door, this is why I start with my lightest color, y'all. So originally I started adding shading to the innermost part of the door, and that's how I would normally shade a door. It would be darker closer to the door jamb and get lighter as it came out into the room. But not this time. That's not accurate. It's not accurate because the light is coming in through the doorway, and so the shading would be out at the end of the door into the darkened room. It would not be closer to the door hinge. But because I start with my lightest colors, I can fix this and nobody's going to know the difference except for that I just told you that I messed it up. So that is helpful with starting with your lighter colors. So, for example, of like kind of trying to overcome my anxiety, several years ago, I was invited to a craft retreat by a friend, with other crafters that I really wanted to meet. And I knew that I was going to have to drive. It was in my state. And it was going to be a 4-hour drive. And like I told you, I have driving anxiety. And when I was younger, it used to just be on the highway. I couldn't bring myself to drive on the highway. I would get very anxious about it. But now it has crept into other portions of my driving. So if I'm driving anywhere that has deep ditches on either side of the roadway, that makes me very anxious. If I'm driving anywhere where I haven't been before, that I'm not familiar with it, that makes me very anxious. It's just kind of grown as I have gotten older, and I can't control it. Now, there are things that I do when I'm driving that kind of help ground me. And I actually had a really hard time. This sounds so silly. One of those things was my gear shift. So I've always driven smaller cars. I had 2 Focuses for like 14 years. And like the gear shift was always right in the center. And I could rest my hand on it and kind of like grip that to ground myself when I was driving. And it was, as small of a thing as it is, it was a source of comfort for me. This solid object that I could put my hands on. And when I bought my new car 2 years ago, they had switched to the circle dial gear shift. So now there is nothing to grip. There is no tall, sturdy gear shift to put my hand on. And so I do struggle with that. Another thing that I do is I don't like the extra noise. The noise on the like from the wind makes me more anxious. And so I roll up my windows, and then I typically turn the music down. I also change my music to a Christian music station. It just kind of puts me in the right frame of mind to know that I don't have control over this, but God does. And that's who I put my trust and my faith in. And so that helps me with that reminder to concentrate on the words of the music. And I obviously also pray. I pray while I am driving, just to comfort myself and to bring down my anxiety level, that way. Back to the card. So typically I use when I'm doing like a navy or a night sky, I like the 90s, the B90s. And so I would use here a 95, a 97, and a 99. Here's the thing. My 95 was out of ink. It was dry and it needed to be refilled, but I'm working on a minimum amount of time here. And so I just grabbed the B45, which I have to tell you is nearly the same color. This is one of those tricky Copic things because you don't need them all. There's a lot of them that are very similar colors, which is nice to have in this situation, where you can just pluck up another color. An RV29 and an R29 is another good example. They're barely off. One's just slightly more pink. In this case, the 45 is a little brighter. It doesn't have as much gray in it as a 95, but it is certainly a suitable replacement in a pinch, and it worked just fine for me here. So I am adding the shading from the bottom of the windows up, and then for the melty portion, I'm going to add the darkest part of the shading at the top, and then it'll get lighter as it comes down. So anyway, these are the things that I do when I'm driving. But when I have a situation that I can't control my brain, for example, with the birth of my daughter, I am terrified of SIDS. I was also terrified of that when my son was born. And it will, in fact, keep me up at night. Now, I'm doing all of the things we are doing. I shouldn't say I'm not the only one who takes care of her. Eric does a bang-up job doing that. But we are doing all of the things that we're supposed to be doing. She is swaddled. She is put in a bassinet on her back by herself. We've introduced a pacifier, which is also supposed to reduce your chance of SIDS. There is literally nothing more that I could be doing. And yet, my brain tells me that I'm going to wake up or I'm going to go upstairs to check on her while she's sleeping, and I'm going to find the worst possible thing in the world. And I can't stop it. Cannot stop the thoughts from happening. And then they keep happening until I check on her. And then a little bit of time will go by and it will start to happen again. It's just like this vicious loop on repeat. And I think to some degree, all parents have this fear. But when you're a person who lives with anxiety, it's much more under control. It's this fear that you have in the back of your mind. It's not this fear that drives your behavior. And for me, it does. But here's how I cope with that and other stressful things in my life. I get in my Bible. That's it. That is what I do. I read my Bible. I concentrate on the things because I don't have any control over this. I am nothing. I have no say in how this is going to play out. But I believe that God does. And so there are things that I know to be true as a Christian. I know that he is in control. I know that he has a plan. I know that he is my place of refuge. He is where I can go and rest. And so that is what I do when I can't control my brain because I am over anxious about the things that I cannot control. I turn to the one person who I know can. And so there's just in general in my life right now, there are things that are kind of outside of my control that I am very anxious about. And I'm sure that I will be sharing that in another video, but I'm just not ready yet. So anyway, just know that there are people when you are anxious that you are not alone, that there are those of us out here, living to the best possible functionality that we can with these things, and everybody is just trying to make it through. And if you need help in doing that, then there's no shame in getting help, whether that's medication, whether that's therapy, whether that's leaning on your friends and family, or of course, turning to your Bible. There is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You are just a person who cares too much, cares so much that it's outside of your control. And that's okay. There are far worse things to be in this world. So back to the card. Here, I wanted to put the sentiment down. I wanted it to be staggered though, and so I used that little tape trick to be able to stagger it. And then I'm going to start gluing these down flat. You saw I used the white gel pen to add some more stars to my sky and to the melt. I don't even know what to call it, guys. The melty starry sky. And just to kind of jazz them up a little bit and add a little something to my scene. But in this scene, that is how I picture my brain, is that there's all of these dark thoughts that I can't control that are always just kind of pouring in. And I have to remember that there's always an open door. There is always a way to cope with it, to deal with it, to live to fight another day and try to handle it and function the best way that you can. And so when your anxiety is so high and you can't sleep and you are having a hard time functioning and you can't seem to get off the couch, look for the door. It's there, I promise. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to see than others, but look for the door. So I used my gray to go over my white die cuts to kind of blend that into my background. And then I used those same Stardust stickles from the first card to just add in little dots of glitter during the night sky. I'm going to use a different type of shimmer, my clear glitter pen, for the cloud portion of it. And then also where the light is shining in, I wanted to add some shimmer to that. And that is this whole card. So thank you guys so much for joining me. The My Hero Arts, it's limited, so you want to get over there and get it as quickly as possible if you're interested in having this one. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.